This video will describe how to use Onset's Growing Degree Day Assistant software tool, which is available with the HOBOware Pro software. The Growing Degree Days Assistant gives the user the ability to calculate growing degree days from temperature data from any hobo logger spanning at least one full calendar day. We call a calendar day from midnight to midnight. Growing degree days are used for agricultural applications to determine crop maturity or perhaps figure out when pests may appear. One growing degree day, as a definition, a growing degree day is equivalent to a 1 degree increase above minimum threshold temperature for a period of 1 day. For example, if the minimum threshold temperature is 70 degrees Fahrenheit and the temperature was a constant 85 for the day, the growing degree day for that day is 15. So our assistant, basically what you'll get is you'll get a single growing degree day value for each full calendar day, and it will be plotted at noon. Growing degree day values are cumulative. That means that each day builds on the next, kind of thing. So we've read out a logger. This is a pendant event logger that measures temperature and rainfall. We're just going to look at the temperature channel, so I've deselected rain. So I have temperature selected, and again, we're in HOBOware Pro, so we see the growing degree days assistant. Anytime you have a temperature channel, HOBOware Pro makes the growing degree day assistant available, whether it's relevant or not. Before we get into the left portion of this screen, I just want to talk about calculation methods. Basically, there are several methods available. There is a white paper on our website that I will give you a link to that describes all of these different methods in detail. I will not go through those right now. I'm just going to use the average method. However, you should become familiar with these if you are looking to get some detailed information about these measurements and calculations. Over here, this is where we can select the data series. If we have a logger that has multiple temperature sensors, we can select which temperature sensor we want to use for our calculation. This particular logger only has one temperature sensor, so we only have one to choose from. We can select an upper and lower development threshold. Here, these are temperatures. Again, we're in degrees Fahrenheit. If you had your preferences set for SI units, these would be in degrees Celsius. These are basically the minimum maximum thresholds that will be used in the growing degree day calculation. Again, if certain calculation methods don't use an upper threshold, and if that method is chosen, that threshold is grayed out. You can't set it. For this exercise, I'm going to put in a 40 degree Fahrenheit lower threshold and a 70 degree upper threshold. And again, those are, you're going to have to determine what those are yourself. Below that are we have the ability to put in biofix parameters. The biofix date is the date you want to start accumulating growing degree days. By default, it starts the very first day of your deployment. You can see here, these are all the days that we're recording data in our data file. So we'll start right from the beginning. The next selection is the degree days to event. And this is basically an alarm threshold where we want to mark when a certain number of degree days accumulate. And those may be an event of interest for you, harvest time, or when pests may first show up. And again, you'll see this. It'll be indicated as an alarm line in the data file. And again, if we were in Fahrenheit, it's DDF, so degree days Fahrenheit. If we're in SI units, it would say DDC for Celsius. So for this, just to make it interesting, I'm going to put in 500. Our event description by default is GDD to maturity, but you can change that to anything that you want. So if it's pest emergence or whatever you want to say, you can put that here. Our resultant series is going to be growing degree days. We can put notes in here, and these will show up in our details pane when we plot the data. So let's click on create new series, and we'll see what we get. So now we can see we have our temperature, and now we have a series called growing degree days. And again, it's in DDF. If we wanted to change it to Celsius, we could. Right here, I'll leave it in Celsius, and let's plot that data. So now we can see here's my temperature. Here are my growing degree days. And again, because we had a biofix date right from the beginning, it started accumulating them immediately. So here are my growing degree days. And here is my, again, my degree days to event. Here's my event at 500. So this is where I can, this is the date where I should be worried about or harvesting my crop, or again, this is my date of interest based on what we put in those parameters. If we want to review what we put in for growing degree days parameters, you click on the little plus sign on that series. You'll get a list. GDD parameters are here, little plus sign, and this is what tells you, again, it tells you how this was processed. If you want to retain this plot, if you like the way it looks, you can click on Save Project, or you can close it and reopen it and redo the calculation, redo the assistant with different parameters if you want to. If you want to save it as a project, you say File, Save Project, or you can export it as export the table data to Excel based on your HOBOware Pro preferences. And if you want to see those accumulated growing degree days, here, again, they're in their own column, but they're only once a day. And again, this is logging every 2 minutes, so there's a lot of data in between the growing degree days. So what I'm going to do is just left-click on temperature, and then right-click and hide series. And now you can see, looking at all my growing degree days, how they accumulate over the period of the deployment.